Hey friends, tonight we're going to do a little time travel. We're going back about 2,200 years to the high cold spine of the Alps, where you are not a famous general, not a hero of legend, not even a frontline fighter. You are just a logistics worker in Hannibal Barca's army. Your job is simple to describe and brutal to live. Keep the army fed, keep the animals alive, keep the supplies moving, and somehow help this impossible plan, crossing the Alps in late autumn to invade Rome, actually work. I'll warn you now, you might not survive the first day. The cold is trying to kill you. The angry locals in the mountains are trying to kill you. And yes, the elephants can literally step on you. But you'll also witness one of the most legendary military feats in human history with your own eyes. Now dim the lights. Breathe slow. Let's walk into that world together. You wake in darkness so sharp it hurts. You weren't woken by a trumpet or an officer. You were dragged awake by the kind of cold that gets into your bones and settles there. The sky above you is still a deep electric blue with a few fading stars. Along the eastern ridge there's only the faintest grey line that promises dawn. The air is so thin and so icy that every breath feels like swallowing a small shard of glass. All around you thousands of men and animals are stirring. You hear muffled coughing, low voices, leather scraping against frozen rock, the clink and drag of gear that has stiffened overnight. This is not the soft sea air of Catalonia. This is not the dusty heat of Spain. This is the Alps, a place so brutal that even the gods, people say, choose to go around instead of through. You pull yourself up from where you slept, and slept is generous. You spent the night curled on a piece of damp wool, on a patch of ground barely cleared of rocks, pressed up against a mule's flank just to steal its body heat. The smell wasn't pleasant, but the animal kept you alive. You rub your face with hands that can barely feel your own skin. The day has already begun. Your first duty is to check your supplies. You're responsible for 5 mules. They're loaded with the most precious thing in this army: food. Not white bread for officers, not delicacies, just dense grain for the rank and file. Hard rations, survival calories. You walk to the first mule, the one everyone calls stubborn, because he earns the name every hour. You untie the pack, slide your numb fingers inside, and feel for moisture. Dry, no mould. Good. In this cold, wet air, keeping grain from getting damp is a constant war. If it spoils, that's not oops, we wasted some bread. That's dozens of men going hungry for the day. And here, food isn't comfort. Food is life. You move down the line, checking each strap, each knot, each sack, making sure nothing rubbed against sharp rock and tore in the night, making sure nothing fell out. Next to you, an older rider from Numidia is wrestling a bit into the mouth of a young horse. He mutters to you through chattering teeth. Use it sparingly, boy. God knows when we'll see the plains of Italy. You don't answer, but you know he's right. Everyone knows he's right. No one says it out loud, but the truth is simple. You are walking a road no one has walked like this before. It might also be a road no one walks again. Hannibal's plan is either genius or madness, maybe both. And you, a nameless support worker in his army, are one of the gears that has to keep turning for that plan to work. Dawn comes slowly, and when the light finally gets strong enough to show faces, you see nothing glamorous, just exhaustion, cracked lips, swollen eyes, men who are already shivering before the day even starts. It's breakfast, technically. But breakfast sounds much nicer than what it really is. There's no hot porridge, no meat, no stew. You reach into the small leather pouch at your waist and pull out your meal. A small, rock-hard chunk of baked grain. It looks like a piece of dried mud. It feels like a stone. It's flour, water, and salt, baked or air dried until it's nearly immortal. Sometimes you get lucky, and there's a little honey or crushed olives in it. Not today. You press it into your mouth and let your saliva soften the edge, because if you try to bite too fast, you'll crack a tooth. You glance sideways and see a young Celtic recruit doing exactly that, chewing like it's bread, wincing in pain. You've already learned the lesson he's learning now. This is soldier fuel, dense, dry, ugly. But it doesn't rot, it travels well, and it keeps men walking. You watch as rations are handed out up the line, as sack is opened. Each soldier steps forward and receives a small daily share of raw grain, barley, wheat, whatever's left. They'll guard it like treasure. Some will grind and boil it into a paste when the army finally stops tonight. Others will just chew it raw. You see one man close his bag and tuck it under his cloak like it's a bag of gold. In a way, it is. Along with grain, there's something else. Vinegar water. Soldiers carry a cheap sour drink, vinegar cup with water. It tastes harsh, like licking an old copper cup, but it keeps you from getting sick, keeps you from fainting, and helps make questionable mountain water a little less deadly. You take a swallow from your own flask and feel your throat burn. It's not pleasant, but it wakes you, and staying awake matters, because once the horn sounds, the army moves. After you choke down that bitter breakfast, your real work starts, loading the mules. This part is technical, and if you do it wrong, someone dies. Each animal will carry somewhere around 45 kilograms. Grain sacks, spare weapons, tent leather, tools, bags of salt. You start by laying a thick felt pad across Stubborn's back. Without padding, the load will rub his skin raw on the rock roads. A wounded mule can't carry. A mule that can't carry forces other mules, or you, to take that weight. That slows the column. Slowing the column can kill people. You and your partner, a quiet Iberian with hard eyes, lift the wicker panniers and hang them evenly on both sides. Balance is everything. If one side is heavier, the mule might stumble off a narrow ledge and take half your supplies down into the ravine with him. You feel the weight by hand, adjusting by instinct the way a master packer does. No scales, just judgment. Then you begin stuffing. Heavy gear at the bottom, fragile items in the middle. Small tools you'll need during the day go near the top where you can grab them fast. It's like playing three-dimensional Tetris in the freezing dark, with lives depending on not messing it up. You lash everything down with leather rope. The straps must be tight enough not to slip on a steep slope, but tied in a way you can release fast if the mule panics, falls, or needs to be lightened in an emergency. You work fast. The horn sounds across the valley, long and low, and the entire camp snaps to motion. What was chaos a few minutes ago becomes a living machine. Thousands of people, hundreds of animals, war gear, carts, tools, weapons, all folding into a single column that begins to creep forward like a massive serpent in the mist. You take your place in the line, leading your 5 mules. Your position is deep in the body of the army. The elite scouts go first, then the engineers who clear the way, then the core infantry and cavalry. Logistics like you sit in the middle, safer from ambush, but stuck breathing everyone else's dust. The pace is miserable. Walk, stop, walk, stop. The mountain road is barely wide enough for 2 men side by side, and this army stretches for kilometers. You can't see the head, you can't see the tail. You're just inside the throat of something huge and determined. The path under your feet is not really a road, it's a scar. Frozen dirt, shattered stone, patches of ice, sudden drops. Your shoes are basically 2 pieces of leather tied to your feet. Every step stings. The fog hangs low and wet. Then it starts to rain. Not real rain, but cold needles of half-frozen water. The rocks go slick. The ground turns to paste. You watch a man ahead of you slip and crash down hard, his shield and spear clattering on the stone. He gets dragged up by his comrades, pale with pain, but still moving. No one has the luxury to stop. You force your mules closer to the inner wall whenever the path narrows. You do not want them drifting toward the cliff. One rock slide, one bad hoof placement, and you'll watch an animal and the food it's carrying vanish into white fog with no sound of hitting bottom. That thought is always with you. It keeps your jaw clenched. After an hour or so of trudging through cold mud and fear, you hear shouting ahead. Not battle shouting, different, excited, nervous. You crane your neck, and then you see it. An elephant. It's like a walking boulder filling the path, skin cracked and dark, ears fanning the air, trunk curling and tasting the wind. There's a handler on its back, speaking low and steady, tapping its head with a hooked tool to guide it forward one careful step at a time. You've seen elephants before, maybe, from far away in Spain, but seeing one on a narrow alpine path with a cliff on one side and a rock wall on the other is something else entirely. You yank your mules in tight against the wall. Their eyes roll with panic. One wrong move, and that huge foot, easily as wide as your chest, could crush a mule's spine like kindling. A man jogging beside the elephant, one of the handlers, gives you a tired smile. "Don't worry," he shouts over the wind. "This one's Ciro, the general's favourite. He's steady." You nod, but your hands are still shaking. He tells you, while still walking, how hard it is to keep these giants alive up here. Their feet split on sharp rock. Their weight makes downhill slopes dangerous. They eat constantly, branches, leaves, anything green, and there's almost nothing green left at this altitude. They hate the cold. They get sick. They die. Hannibal left Spain with dozens of war elephants. Every day in the mountains he loses more. Sometimes one slips and falls and nothing can stop it. Nothing survives that fall. You watch Ciro disappear into the fog ahead. You smell him even after he's gone. Hay, leather, and that thick, warm animal scent that doesn't belong in a frozen world like this. Then the path gets worse. It starts as slow misery and becomes danger. Meltwater and last night's rain have triggered a small landslide. The road ahead is gone, choked with mud, collapsed rock, shattered ice. The column grinds to a halt. This is bad. Stopping in the cold is sometimes worse than walking in the cold. When you're moving, your body can pretend it's still alive. When you're standing still, the mountain reaches in and starts taking heat out of you piece by piece. You hug yourself and tuck your fingers into your sleeves. Your shoes are filled with icy mud. You can't feel your toes. Time stretches. The wind cuts. You start to drift in and out, not because you're sleepy, but because your body is trying to shut things down to survive. Finally you hear a new kind of noise from up front, metal on stone, men grunting in rhythm, voices calling orders. Engineers. Hannibal's engineers are some of the quiet heroes of this march. They climb down onto the damaged section, tied to ropes like spiders, hammering into the raw mountainside with chisels and crowbars, cutting, widening, forcing a new path into the cliff, one handspan at a time. You watch them work. They're calm, precise, covered in soot and frost. One slip and they die. They keep going anyway. Word passes backward through the line. There's a sheer rock face ahead. The old path is gone, swallowed by a cliff collapse. The only way forward is to carve a new ledge into the mountain itself. You're sent to help gather firewood, any wood at all, branches, roots, scraps, wet pine. The engineers pile it against the rock and light it. Flames lick along the stone, heating it until it hisses. Then, on command, men throw vinegar on the glowing surface. The rock shrieks, cracks, and flakes. Steam explodes into the freezing air. The smell is sharp and bitter. Whether later historians exaggerated this method or not, in front of you it feels like watching raw willpower punch a hole straight through the Alps. Inch by inch a path appears, narrow, dangerous, barely wide enough for one person at a time. You lead each mule across that new edge yourself. You don't look down. You don't breathe. Your entire world collapses to the patch of rock under your feet and the pull of the rope in your hands. When you reach the other side, you realize your back is soaked in cold sweat even though the air is freezing. Time keeps moving. Eventually, you don't know how long, the officers call a halt. Lunch break, they say. It sounds like something pleasant, but it isn't. There's no cooking, no tents, no sitting around on blankets. Lunch break means the army pauses for maybe half an hour so nothing collapses outright. First, you check your mules. More important than checking yourself. You unload Stubborn and rub his sore back with salt water you mixed in the cap of your flask. A trick an older handler taught you. You give each animal a careful mouthful of grain and a little water. Not too much. Too much can make them bloat and die on the next climb. Only after the animals are cared for do you let yourself sit. You wedge your back into a crack in the rock to block the wind and take out the handful of raw grain you were given that morning. You chew it slowly. It's tough, dry, and tastes like dirt, but it's fuel. Around you, other soldiers do the same. A lucky few pull out scraps of dried meat or hard cheese they've saved. Most people just eat what you're eating and say nothing. There is no free energy out here. Everything costs something. After the break, you tighten down all the straps, reload all the weight, and march again. The fog thickens. Visibility drops to maybe 20 paces. You can only see the vague outline of the man ahead of you. The line stops again, not because of weather this time, but because of people. Figures emerge from the mist, tall, rough-looking mountain tribesmen with long hair, heavy cloaks, wooden shields. Their eyes are sharp and suspicious. They are not Romans. They are not your allies either. They live here. They know these passes, and they know you are weak. A centurion moves up and raises a hand for calm. He shouts to them in their language. You can't understand, but you can read body language. And the body language says, this could get bad. You pull your mules tighter into the middle of the column. You try to look smaller. The tribes here are unpredictable. Some hate Rome and quietly help Hannibal. Others don't care who you are. You're just a moving pile of grain, metal, leather, and animals. And that's worth raiding. Sometimes they talk. Sometimes they smile and take silver. Sometimes they wait until you're in a narrow gorge, then drop rocks on your head. Today, after tense shouting, silver changes hands. The mountain men melt back into the fog. The column moves again, now with every soldier gripping his weapon a little tighter. The afternoon drags. Your legs stop feeling like legs and start feeling like wood. The cold comes from all directions. Your shoulders ache from controlling 5 nervous animals on slime-slick stone. When the light finally starts to fade, the officers begin scanning for a place to camp. Choosing a campsite here is not throw down a tent and call it done. This is survival math. You need ground that's somewhat level. You need a position sheltered from the worst wind, but not directly under a slope that might avalanche in the night. You need some kind of water source, even if it's just a slow trickle coming out of a crack in the rock. You need enough open space to defend against a night attack. Eventually, they pick a rocky shelf surrounded on three sides by higher stone. It's not good, but it's the best you'll get. The army shifts from marching formation into camp formation. You move your exhausted mules to the spot assigned to pack animals. You unload them completely. You stack and cover the supplies with tarps to keep the night moisture out. Then you check their bodies again. Backs, hooves, joints. Because if they break, tomorrow's march gets even harder. Only after all of that do you think about where you're sleeping. Forget tent. Ordinary soldiers and logistics workers like you don't get tents. Tents are for senior officers and for the medical unit. You and three others, your Iberian partner, two Gauls with loud voices, pick a patch of ground, clear the worst rocks, lay shields on edge as a low windbreak, and spread your cloaks on the ground. That's home. Around you, even in total exhaustion, the machine keeps working. Perimeter stones are stacked into low walls. Sentries are posted at choke points. Scouts are sent higher up to watch for raiders. Latrine trenches are dug downwind and away from water, because even here, with everything falling apart, disease can still kill an army faster than swords can. Fires bloom across camp like orange flowers. Men crowd close to them, cupping hands over the flames, letting feeling return to fingers, toes, faces. You chew the last of your grain. That's dinner. No soup, no meat. Just something in your stomach so you don't pass out. You drift toward a larger fire where a handful of men from all over are sitting. Iberian infantry, Numidian cavalry from North Africa, a couple of huge Gauls with wild hair, and someone like you, another logistics clerk. They make space for you without a word. You sit. You let the heat soak into your bones. For a while, no one talks. Then, slowly, stories start. Someone brags about his horse and says no Roman cavalry can catch a Numidian rider on open ground. Someone else jokes about scaring Romans with elephants at Saguntum, watching them run like they'd seen ghosts. Someone complains about the rations. Someone mentions a girl back home. The accents are different. The languages are mixed. But for a few minutes, under this thin warmth, you feel almost human again. And you also see, maybe for the first time, what Hannibal actually built. Rome fields legions of Roman citizens. One language, one culture, one system. Hannibal's army is a patchwork quilt. Carthaginians, Iberians, Gauls, Numidians. Balearic slingers, engineers, traders, scouts. Men who wouldn't even speak to each other in peacetime are now depending on each other to survive. And somehow, they do. That doesn't happen by accident. That's leadership. You're thinking this when a sound cuts across camp. Not shouting, not alarm, more like a wave of quiet. Heads turn, voices drop. You look up. Hannibal himself is walking the camp, not riding, walking, wrapped in a heavy dark cloak, hood low, moving steadily from fire to fire with a few close guards. He stops at sentries and asks if they're warm enough. He checks on the wounded in the medical tent. He leans over the fire and studies the burn like he's making sure the fuel will last the night. He talks to men in their own languages, asking a veteran if his old injury can handle this cold, asking a cavalryman if his horses still have fodder, joking with a Gaul about his axe work. He isn't untouchable. He isn't hiding behind lines of officers. He's here, in the same freezing wind as you. You've never been this close to him before, and it hits you that this is why men follow him. Not just because he's brilliant, not just because he hates Rome, but because he's suffering with you. Sharing the same hard ground, eating the same rough food, staying awake to see the same wounded you tried not to look at. When he disappears back into the dark, Something changes in camp. The fear, the fatigue, it's all still there. But the mood settles. People move with a little more purpose. They start laying down for sleep instead of just shivering by the fire. It's like everyone silently agreed. If he's still pushing, we keep pushing. You go back to your little windbreak behind the shields. You mean to sleep. You're so tired you can barely lift your arms. But before the camp truly quiets, there's one last job. The one no one sings songs about. Numbers. Around a smaller fire, a centurion and a few logistics scribes sit hunched over wax tablets, quietly taking inventory. You're called in to report. One by one, they record the cold facts of the day. Grain remaining, salt remaining, tools damaged, pack animals lost, men lost. You report that all 5 of your mules made it through, but 2 have raw spots on their backs and 1 sprained a hoof crossing the landslide trail. You report how much grain you have left, how much fodder. Another clerk says flatly, 17 mules lost today. 12 went over the edge. 5 collapsed and couldn't get up again. 1 elephant went down and didn't survive the fall. Then come the people. Unit by unit, squad by squad, officers list the wounded, the missing, the dead. 2 killed in a clash with mountain tribes. 1 slipped and was lost in the fog. 3 down with fever. 1 scout never returned. Each number is a person you saw this morning. Each number is a voice you heard an hour ago by a fire. And now they're just scratches in wax. You stand there and listen as the day is converted into math. Because this is how an army survives. Hannibal can only plan if he knows what still exists. Food, animals, men, strength, weakness, cost. Tomorrow's choices, whether to push, rest, negotiate, fight, depend on the ugly total spoken tonight. When it's finished, you're released. You crawl under your cloak and curl in on yourself, trying to make your body smaller than the cold. The ground is stone. The air is wet iron. The wind tastes like snow. You can't stop replaying the day, the burn of morning air in your lungs, the taste of that unbreakable biscuit, the shaking weight of the mules pulling against you on the cliff, the sudden appearance of mountain tribes in the fog, eyes sharp and unreadable, the engineers standing on a sheer wall, carving a road out of living rock while steam and smoke turned the air white. Hannibal's silhouette in the firelight, calm in the cold, the list of losses. You think about why you're even here. Some men are here for revenge against Rome. Some are here for gold. Some for honor. Some because this is the only future they were offered. You? You're here because you were swept up in something larger than you. And now the only way out is forward. Your eyes finally start to close. The camp settles. The last sparks of conversation fade. The fires burn lower. Only the wind and an occasional cough from a distant sentry break the silence. Above you, the alpine sky is so clear it almost doesn't look real. The stars are cold, sharp, distant. They watch all of this without a sound. They watch you, a nobody, shaking under a thin cloak on a hostile mountain ledge. They watch Hannibal, somewhere in the dark, planning how to break Rome's spine. They watch a frozen, starving army that should have died days ago, still inching forward. You feel yourself slipping into sleep at last. In your mind, in the last soft edge of awareness, the mountain fades. The cold fades. The mud and blood and vinegar and stone fade. You feel warm grass under your back instead of rock. You feel a wide open plain instead of a narrow ledge. You see, in the distance, not cliffs and fog, but soft rolling land. Fields, trees, lights, Italy. The thing you've all been promised. the thing Rome never imagined you would reach. Your breathing slows, your body lets go, your thoughts drift like smoke. You fall asleep knowing that tomorrow will hurt, and the day after will hurt. And some people around you will not live to see the flat, gentle land your mind is showing you now. But you also fall asleep with this quiet, stubborn truth. You were there. You carried the grain. You kept the animals standing. You helped cut a road into a cliff with fire and rope and your bare, shaking hands. You, a nameless logistics worker, walked with Hannibal over the Alps. And whether or not anyone remembers your name, you are part of the reason this impossible story becomes real. Rest now. Let the cold fade. Let the noise fade. Let the mountain drift away. Sleep